Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. With Christmas drawing very near, we naturally seek warmth and comfort. But tonight, we leave that behind. We have central heating, yet we toss and turn. 30,000 years ago, in a world 15 degrees colder, our ancestors slept perfectly. The night lasted 16 hours. The snow was lethal. Yet they knew a secret we've forgotten. We assume the Stone Age was just misery. But in the last glacial maximum, facing winds that could freeze you instantly, cavemen didn't just survive, they mastered the dark. They turned survival into a rhythm of rest that puts our modern sleep to shame. Before we uncover their secret, a quick request. If this story helps you find your own rhythm, please like and subscribe. And tell me below, what time is it in your part of the world? I love seeing our community connect across the map. Now, lights down, shoulders loose. Let's relearn how to sleep like a survivor. Let's begin. Allow your eyes to rest, half closed, filtering the world through your lashes until everything is just soft shapes and firelight. Step back in time. The sun is dipping below a jagged horizon. There are no streetlights coming to save you here. The night is a rising tide, heavy and absolute. You stand alone at the edge of a white abyss. The air bites. This wind has invisible teeth sharpened over millennia. It is a predatory thing, prowling the ice, seeking the rhythm of a heartbeat, eager to extinguish the fragile warmth you carry inside. The temperature is perhaps 20 degrees below zero, perhaps colder. There are no thermometers here, no weather forecasts, no promise that tomorrow will be warmer. There is only the lived reality of cold. The kind of cold that makes your lungs ache with each inhalation. The kind that turns your breath into a cloud that freezes in your beard or the fur around your hood. Behind you, miles away now, are the hunting grounds where your group spent the bright months. But those grounds are barren now. The herds have moved. The berries are long buried under snow. And so you followed the old paths, the paths your grandparents knew, to this place. Before you, carved into a limestone cliff face, half hidden by a curtain of icicles that catch the last purple light of day, is the mouth of a cave. This is not just any cave. This is the winter home. The place where your people have returned for more generations than anyone can count. The place where, if you're careful, if you're skilled, if you're lucky, you might live to see spring. The entrance is perhaps twice the height of a person, wide enough for several people to enter together, but not so wide that wind can howl straight through. Already you can see the marks of previous winters. Soot stains on the rock above the entrance where smoke has escaped. Scratches in the stone, some made by human tools, some older, deeper, made by the claws of the cave's previous tenants. Bears. Not the black bears or brown bears of later ages, but the massive cave bears of the Ice Age. Ursus spelaeus. Creatures that could weigh half a ton, that stood 9 feet tall on their hind legs. For tens of thousands of years, these bears claimed the caves. They were born in them, hibernated in them, died in them. Their bones carpeted the floors so thickly that even now, in your time, you sometimes stumble over the skull of a bear that died when your great-great-great-grandmother was young. But the bears are fewer now. Year by year their numbers dwindle. Because your people, the people with fire and spears and the kind of desperate courage that winter demands, have taken the caves. Not through great battles, usually, but through persistence. By finding bears deep in hibernation and killing them in their sleep. By claiming the warm depths that mean survival. Tonight, there are no bears in this cave. Your hunters made sure of that weeks ago when the first snow fell. What waits inside now is different. It's the smell of smoke and old fat. The sound of children's voices echoing off stone. The flicker of firelight deep in the throat of the earth. Home. You trudge forward, your feet wrapped in layers of hide and fur, each step crunching through the surface crust of snow. The sound is sharp in the stillness. There are no birds singing here, no insects humming, just wind and your footsteps, and the faint crackle of ice forming on the rocks around you. As you approach the entrance, something shifts. The air. It's subtle at first. Outside, the wind was constant, pressing against you from every direction. But as you step into the threshold, into that liminal space between outside and inside, between the world of ice and the world of stone, the wind stops. Not completely. You can still hear it, howling somewhere above you, frustrated perhaps, clawing at the rock. But you're protected now. The cave mouth acts like a baffle, breaking up the wind's power, scattering it. And here's something remarkable. As you move deeper, just past the entrance, the temperature changes. Not warmer, not yet, but stable. Outside, the temperature might plummet another 10 degrees once the sun fully sets. Out there, frost will form on everything. Your eyelashes would freeze together if you slept in the open. But in here, the temperature will stay almost constant. Geologists have a term for this. They call it homeostatic. Deep caves maintain a temperature close to the average annual temperature of the region. Even in the depths of winter, even when the surface world is locked in ice, the cave stays perhaps 5 to 10 degrees above freezing. Not warm, not comfortable by any modern measure, but survivable. Just barely survivable, if you know what you're doing. You take another step, then another. The light from outside is fading now, failing to penetrate more than a few yards into the cave. But ahead, growing stronger with each step you take, is another light. Warmer, orange and yellow and alive. Fire. The scent reaches you now. Wood smoke, but not just that. There's something else mixed in. A sharper, stranger smell. Bone smoke. Because wood is scarce here, precious, saved for special purposes. Most of the time, your people burn what they have in abundance. The bones of the animals they hunt. Mammoth bones, thick with marrow and grease. Reindeer bones, lighter but plentiful. The bones crack and pop in the heat, releasing their stored fat, burning with a flame that's steadier and longer lasting than wood, though the smoke is heavier, thicker, with an almost sweet, sick smell that coats the inside of your nose and throat. But you're used to it, more than used to it. That smell means warmth. It means food cooking. It means safety. You round a corner, a natural turn in the cave, and suddenly the space opens up. This is the living chamber, the heart of the winter world. The ceiling rises here, perhaps 15 feet overhead, disappearing into shadows that flicker and shift with the firelight. The walls curve around like cupped hands, creating a space perhaps 30 feet across. And everywhere there is evidence of habitation. To your right, against the wall, are piles of supplies. Stacks of firewood carefully hoarded, bundles of dried grass, hides and furs, some still stiff, some softened by hours of chewing and scraping. Stone tools organized by type, spear points waiting to be hafted, scrapers for working leather, heavy chopping tools for breaking bone. To your left, someone has created a workspace. A flat stone serves as a table. Scattered around it are bone needles, sinew thread, and a half-finished piece of clothing. A child's garment, perhaps. The leather is soft, supple, worked with patient hands. And in the center, dominating everything, is the fire. It burns in a shallow depression, either a natural dip in the stone floor or one that's been enlarged over many winters by the heat of countless fires. The hearth is ringed with stones, blackened and cracked from repeated heating and cooling. These stones serve multiple purposes. They radiate heat long after the flames have died down. They protect the fire from drafts, and they provide surfaces for cooking, for heating water in skin pouches, for warming hands and feet that have gone numb with cold. Around the fire, life unfolds. An elder sits close to the flames, so close you wonder that he doesn't scorch his skin. But his eyes are half closed, his face tilted toward the warmth, and there's a contentment in his expression that speaks of deep relief. After a day outside, perhaps checking trap lines or gathering what little kindling could be found, the fire is everything. Two women work together, turning strips of meat on flat stones set near the coals. The meat sizzles and spits, releasing thin spirals of smoke that add another layer to the complex tapestry of smells. Mammoth, probably. Or maybe horse. The meat is lean this time of year, the animals having burned through their summer fat. But it's protein. It's survival. Children huddle together on a thick bed of furs, playing some game with small stones and bone pieces. Their voices are quiet, not the raucous shouting of summer play, but there's laughter there. Soft, tired laughter, the kind that comes at the end of a long day when you're safe and warm and fed. And as you stand there, letting your eyes adjust, letting your body begin to thaw in the radiant heat, you notice something else. Something you wouldn't notice if you lived in our modern world of artificial light. The darkness beyond the fire is absolute, complete. It's not the darkness of a room with curtains drawn, where streetlights seep through cracks. It's not the darkness of a power outage, where you can still see vague shapes. This is the darkness that humans evolved in. The darkness that is the default state of the world. And in that darkness, The fire becomes something more than light. It becomes the center of existence, the gathering place, the clock by which time is measured. When the fire is high, it's early evening. When it burns low, midnight approaches. When it's reduced to coals, it's time for the second sleep. You move toward the warmth, your cold, stiffened limbs beginning to remember how to move fluidly. Someone shifts, making room. A child looks up at you, eyes reflecting firelight like twin flames. You lower yourself onto the furs, feeling the accumulated warmth of bodies and fire rising up through the layers. Outside, the temperature is still falling. The wind is still howling. The vast frozen world is settling into its long night. But here, in this bubble of light carved from darkness, in this pocket of warmth stolen from cold, life goes on. This is where we'll spend our night. In this cave, in this circle of firelight, learning what our ancestors knew about rest, about survival, and about the strange and beautiful way that hardship can bring people together. Are you comfortable? Is your breathing steady? Good. Let's go deeper. The cave is not a single room. It's more like a series of chambers connected by passages, each with its own character, its own purpose. And as the night deepens, as the work of the day winds down, the group begins a slow migration. Not everyone sleeps in the same place. That's the first thing you need to understand. The idea that Stone Age people simply collapsed wherever they happened to be standing is a fiction, a Hollywood simplification. These were people whose survival depended on careful thought, on planning, on making the best use of every resource. And the layout of the cave was perhaps their most important resource. The main chamber where the fire burns is the social heart. This is where meals are prepared, where tools are made, where stories are told. But it's also where the smoke is thickest. All through the day and into early evening, the fire is fed constantly, flames leaping high to provide light for work, heat for cooking. The smoke rises, as smoke does, seeking escape. Some of it finds cracks in the ceiling, natural chimneys that vent to the surface. But much of it hangs in the upper part of the chamber, creating a dark, acrid cloud. You can see it now, actually, if you look up. The ceiling disappears not just because of darkness, but because of that layer of smoke, thick enough to make your eyes water if you were to stand up fully. But down here, sitting or lying, the air is clearer, breathable. It's one of those things you learn early. You can sit by a fire in a cave. You cannot stand. Archaeological digs have found this smoke layer preserved in the geological record. Soot deposits on cave ceilings, sometimes inches thick, built up over thousands of winters. At Lascaux, at Chauvet, at a dozen other sites, scientists have analysed these deposits and found evidence of different types of fuel burned at different times. Wood smoke has one chemical signature, bone smoke another, and marrow smoke, the richest fuel of all, leaves its own distinctive mark. But as night deepens, as the work is done and bellies are full, the fire is allowed to die down. Not to go out, never to go out, but to settle into a bed of coals, glowing red and orange, radiating heat without the smoke-producing flames. And this is when people begin to move. Some, particularly the elders and the very young, might stay in the main chamber, close to the coals, close to the easy warmth. They'll sleep in shifts, one or two always tending the fire, adding small sticks or bone fragments, keeping the coals alive. But others, most of the group, will move deeper. You rise now, picking up a bundle. It's heavy. Furs mostly. Reindeer hides sewn together, the hair still on, providing insulation. Bearskins, thick and luxurious, taken from the cave's previous inhabitants. Each person has their own sleeping furs, carefully maintained, dried in the rare winter sun when possible, or near the fire when not. Someone lifts a lamp. Not a modern lamp, of course. This is a shallow stone bowl, perhaps the size of 2 cupped hands. It's filled with rendered fat, thick and yellowish, and from the centre rises a wick made of twisted plant fibre, some kind of rush or moss that's been dried and braided. When lit, it produces a small, steady flame. Not bright, nothing like the fire, but enough to see by, enough to navigate. The fat is mammoth grease, most likely, rendered from the layer under the skin, heated and strained, then allowed to cool into a solid mass that can be scooped out and used as needed. A lamp this size, properly maintained, will burn for over an hour without needing to be refilled. And it produces almost no smoke. Just a faint, not unpleasant smell of cooked fat and a clear, warm light. Experimental archaeologists have recreated these lamps. They've timed them, measured their light output, and tested different types of fat and different wick materials. And what they found is remarkable. These simple tools, these stone bowls of animal fat, were perhaps the most important invention of the Ice Age. More important, in some ways, than the spear or the needle. Because they allowed people to carry light with them, to extend the day, to create small bubbles of visibility in the absolute dark. With the lamp held high, you begin to walk, away from the fire, away from the main chamber, into the passages beyond. The temperature drops almost immediately, not drastically, but you feel it. A coolness on your face, a slight constriction in your chest as your body reacts. The stone walls here are closer, the ceiling lower. You have to duck slightly, moving carefully, watching your footing on the uneven floor. The lamp casts wild shadows. Every irregularity in the rock becomes a looming shape, a potential danger. Your mind, shaped by evolution to see threats in darkness, populates the shadows with imagined predators. But you know this path. You've walked it every night for weeks now. And the others are with you, a line of people carrying their sleeping bundles, moving deeper into the earth's embrace. After perhaps 50 feet, the passage opens again, another chamber, smaller than the main room. The ceiling here is lower, barely 8 feet, making the space feel more enclosed, more intimate. And this is intentional. This is where most of the group will sleep. The choice of this deeper chamber is not random. It's based on a sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics, though of course the people making this choice wouldn't use that word. They'd just say, it's warmer here. And it is. Because even though you've moved away from the fire,
You've also moved into the zone where the cave's own geothermal properties become dominant.
The Earth itself, warmed by the slow decay of radioactive elements in its core, by the compression of layers upon layers of rock, radiates a gentle, constant heat. It's not much, just a few degrees. But in a world where survival margins are measured in degrees, it matters. Moreover, this inner chamber is sheltered from the convection currents that plague the main room. Air warmed by the fire wants to rise, to escape. Cool air from outside wants to sink, to flow in along the floor. This creates a constant circulation, a draft that can steal heat from your body even as you sit near the flames. But here, deeper in, that circulation is broken. The air is still. Stagnant, yes. Stale, perhaps. But still. And still air is warm air, relatively speaking. The floor here has been prepared. This is not bare rock. Generations of winter inhabitants have built up a living surface, a kind of Paleolithic floor. The base layer is gravel and small stones, providing drainage. Above that is packed clay, carried in from outside during the autumn, when it was still soft enough to work. The clay creates a barrier, preventing moisture from seeping up from below. Then comes a thick layer of plant material. Dried grasses, reeds and straw, if any were available, were gathered during the late summer and early autumn specifically for this purpose. This plant layer is like a massive cushion, providing both insulation and softness. And here's something remarkable. This plant bedding was not just laid down randomly. Studies of preserved bedding from sites like Esquiu Gablianis have found evidence of deliberate layering. Different plant species chosen for different properties. Tough grasses as a base, softer grasses and flowers on top. And between layers, in some cases, aromatic plants, herbs that smell sweet when crushed, plants that might have insect-repellent properties. There's also evidence that these plant layers were periodically burned, not completely, just a quick hot burn to char the surface, kill parasites, and dry out any moisture that had accumulated. The ash from these burns would then be mixed back into the bedding, creating a kind of deodorizing and pest-controlling agent. Archaeologists have debated why ash was so common in sleeping areas. Was it just from proximity to fires? Possibly. But experimental work suggests something more intentional. When you scatter wood ash over a sleeping area, it absorbs moisture, neutralizes odors, and makes the environment less hospitable to fleas, lice, and mites. Ancient people might not have known chemistry, but they would have noticed the effect. On top of all this prepared surface, people now spread their personal furs. And this is where the real insulation happens. Air trapped between layers of fur is nature's best insulator. Each reindeer hair is hollow, filled with air. When you layer multiple hides, fur side up and fur side down, you create a sandwich of trapped air that resists heat loss remarkably well. Tests done with replica Ice Age bedding have shown that a person lying on a proper fur bed loses heat at about 1/3 the rate of someone lying on bare ground. That's the difference between surviving the night and dying of hypothermia. People arrange their sleeping areas now, not in neat rows as we might in our modern beds, but in a rough circle or oval, oriented so that everyone's head is toward the center, feet toward the walls. This arrangement maximizes shared body heat. It also creates a social space in the middle, a gathering point for those late-night waking periods. You find your spot. It's the same spot you've used for weeks, which means the bedding here has been compressed by your body, molded to your shape. It's not comfortable in any modern sense. There are no pillows, no mattresses, no adjustable frames. But it's yours. And there's a strange comfort in that familiarity. As you settle, arranging your furs, you notice the temperature in the chamber rising, just slightly, just from the presence of bodies. 8, 10, 12 people, each radiating heat like a small furnace. That heat, trapped by the low ceiling, held by the still air, begins to accumulate. Outside, the wind has picked up. You can hear it now, a distant howling, the sound penetrating even here into this deep chamber. It sounds like a living thing, that wind, like something trying to get in. And in a sense, it is. The wind would steal your heat if it could, would turn you into a frozen statue, just another casualty of the Ice Age. But it can't reach you here. Here, surrounded by stone and insulated by fur, warmed by breath and body heat, you are safe. For now, let's talk about the cold for a moment. Really understand it. Because the cold of an Ice Age winter is not like any cold you've probably experienced, even if you've been through modern blizzards or harsh northern winters. The last glacial maximum, the period we're inhabiting tonight, represents the peak of the most recent Ice Age. Massive ice sheets, miles thick in places, covered Canada, Scandinavia, northern Britain. The weight of that ice was so immense that it actually depressed the Earth's crust, pushing the land down into the mantle beneath. At the edges of these ice sheets, the climate was dominated by katabatic winds. That's a term from meteorology. It refers to winds that form when cold, dense air on top of an ice sheet begins to flow downhill under its own weight, accelerating as it goes, picking up speed until it screams across the landscape at tremendous velocity. These winds are dry, brutally dry, because cold air cannot hold moisture the way warm air can. And when such winds blow across exposed skin, they don't just cool you, they desiccate you. Draw moisture right out of your lungs with each breath, crack your lips, make your eyes burn, turn any exposed patch of skin brittle and grey. The temperature in this region during deep winter would regularly drop to 20 or 30 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, sometimes colder. And at those temperatures, the world behaves differently than we're used to. Water freezes, obviously, but not just into ice, into a substance hard as stone that can shatter if struck. Rivers and lakes lock solid, ice thick enough to support the weight of mammoths crossing. Springs and seeps turn to hanging gardens of icicles, some as thick as your leg. But it's not just water that changes. The very air becomes different. Sounds travel strangely in extreme cold. Some sounds carry for miles, sharp and clear. Others seem to be swallowed, muffled. Your own voice sounds foreign, flat. The moisture in your breath freezing into tiny ice crystals that fall around you like glitter. And the stillness. On the coldest nights, when there's no wind, the world becomes preternaturally still. No insects, of course, no birds. Even the small mammals that might normally rustle in the underbrush are hidden, burrowed deep, trying to conserve every calorie. The silence is so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat, the rush of blood in your ears, the creak of snow settling under its own weight. This is the world outside your cave tonight. And it's a world that wants to kill you. Not maliciously, nature doesn't work that way, but indifferently. The cold doesn't care about your hopes, your fears, your plans for spring. It simply is. And if you make a mistake, if you find yourself outside without proper preparation, it will take you. Quickly, efficiently. Hypothermia in extreme cold is not the gradual process it can be in milder conditions. At 20 or 30 below, if you're wet or exhausted or without shelter, you have perhaps an hour, maybe less. Your core temperature drops. Your body, in a desperate attempt to protect vital organs, begins shutting down circulation to your extremities. Your fingers and toes go numb first. Then your hands and feet lose function. You become clumsy, stupid. You start making bad decisions. You might even begin to feel warm. A phenomenon called paradoxical undressing, where hypothermia victims in the final stages feel so convinced they're overheating that they remove their clothes. And then you sleep, and you don't wake up. The archaeological record of the Ice Age is full of evidence of this. Remains of individuals found in seemingly random locations far from any shelter. Some showing signs of injury, suggesting they were fleeing something. Others seemingly caught by surprise by weather. Still others, mysteriously, found partially undressed, victims of that final, cruel joke the cold plays on a dying brain. But here's what's remarkable. Despite these dangers, despite the objective reality that this climate was one of the most hostile to human life ever experienced, people thrived. Not just survived, mind you, thrived. Created art, developed complex tool technologies, maintained long-distance trade networks, raised children who grew strong and healthy enough to have children of their own. How? The answer lies in understanding what you cannot change versus what you can control. You cannot change the cold. It simply is. But you can change how the cold affects you. And that's what the cave represents. It's not just a shelter. It's a tool. A piece of technology as important as any spear or scraper. Let's think about the physics for a moment. Your body, right now, is producing heat. It's doing this through cellular metabolism, the process by which food is converted into energy. An average adult at rest produces about 100 watts of heat. That's equivalent to a bright light bulb. It doesn't sound like much, but it's constant. Hour after hour, your body is a furnace, burning calories, radiating warmth. The challenge is keeping that warmth around your body instead of letting it escape into the environment. And there are several ways heat can escape. Conduction is heat moving through direct contact. If you lie on cold ground, heat flows from your warm body into the cold earth. This is why the bedding is so crucial. Convection is heat carried away by moving air. This is why wind is so dangerous and why the inner chamber, with its still air, is warmer despite being farther from the fire. Radiation is heat energy emitted as infrared light. You're doing it right now, glowing in the infrared spectrum, though your eyes can't see it. And evaporation is heat lost through moisture leaving your body through sweat or breath. In the cave, every one of these heat loss mechanisms is being managed. The bedding prevents conductive loss to the ground. The chamber's shape and location minimize convection. The low ceiling traps radiated heat, and the relatively humid air reduces evaporative loss. But there's more. Remember the fire in the main chamber. Even though you're now in a different room, separated by 50 feet of passage, that fire is still affecting your environment. Because heat from the fire doesn't just radiate outward and disappear. It warms the rock. And rock, it turns out, is an excellent thermal mass. Limestone, the type of rock most caves are carved from, has a high specific heat capacity. That means it takes a lot of energy to change its temperature. But once changed, it holds that new temperature for a long time. So the fire, burning hour after hour in the main chamber, gradually warms the surrounding stone. That stone then radiates heat, slowly, steadily, into the cave system. It's like a gigantic, natural radiator. This effect is subtle. You won't feel waves of heat rolling down the passage. But if you were to measure the temperature of the rock walls in your sleeping chamber, you'd find they're a few degrees warmer than they would be without the fire. And those few degrees matter. There's a term for what's being created here. It's called a microclimate. A small zone where conditions are significantly different from the surrounding environment. Outside, the climate is one of the harshest on Earth. Inside, it's merely difficult. And that difference, that gap between lethal and livable, is what winter survival skills are all about. Now, you might be wondering, if the cave is so warm, why do you need all the furs? Why not just sleep on bare ground? Because warm is relative. The cave might be 10 or 15 degrees above freezing, but your body core needs to stay around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a gap of 70 or 80 degrees. Without insulation, your body would have to burn tremendous amounts of calories just to maintain that temperature. You'd wake up in the morning emaciated, having burned through days' worth of stored energy in a single night. The furs let you conserve that energy. They don't produce heat, they trap it. Keep the heat your body produces close to your skin. And this conservation of energy is crucial, because food in winter is scarce. Every calorie counts. A cold night, poorly managed, could mean the difference between having the strength to hunt tomorrow and being too weak to even stand. So you sleep in layers. Your everyday clothing, made of sewn hide, stays on. Then you wrap yourself in your sleeping furs. You might tuck your hands into your armpits, your feet pulled up toward your body, minimizing your surface area. You become a small, furry ball, losing heat as slowly as possible. And around you, the others are doing the same. Bodies close, but not quite touching. Near enough to feel the radiant heat from each other, but far enough apart for air to circulate, preventing moisture buildup from breath and sweat. Because moisture is the enemy. Wet clothing, wet furs, lose their insulating properties. Water is a conductor, not an insulator. Get your furs wet, whether from snow, rain, or your own sweat, and you're in serious danger. This is why, during the day, such care is taken to keep everything dry. Furs are hung near the fire, but not so close they might catch or singe. Clothing is beaten to knock off ice and snow before entering the cave. Wet items are left in the outer chambers, where they'll freeze hard, then be beaten again the next day to shatter the ice. It's a constant battle. Against the cold, yes, but more fundamentally, against entropy. Against the universal tendency of heat to disperse, of warmth to flee into cold, of order to dissolve into chaos. Every fur carefully placed, every fire tended, every draft blocked, is an act of defiance against that tendency. A declaration that, despite everything, despite the howling wind and the killing cold, life will persist. Warmth will be maintained. Morning will come. And somehow, wrapped in these thoughts, listening to the distant wind, feeling the gentle warmth of the bodies around you, you begin to relax. The physics of survival fade into the background. The analysis quiets, and what remains is simply the experience, the sensation of being warm enough, of being safe enough, of being together. It's enough. Let's talk about the art of sleep in the Stone Age. Because it was an art. Not the sort of thing you could take for granted, the way we do when we collapse into a modern bed with its springs and memory foam and electric blanket. Every element of sleep in a Paleolithic cave was intentional, refined over thousands of years of trial and error, of cold nights that claimed the unprepared, of successful strategies passed down from parent to child. The bedding you're lying on right now represents a sophisticated understanding of materials, of layering, of what we might call primitive engineering. Let's examine it closely, layer by layer, understanding not just what it is, but why it is. The very bottom layer, as we discussed, is drainage. Small stones and gravel create air gaps, channels for any moisture that might seep up from below to flow away laterally rather than wicking up into the sleeping area. In a cave, even a relatively dry one, there's always some moisture. Water percolates down through the limestone, drips from the ceiling, condenses on cool surfaces. Without drainage, the sleeping area would become a swamp, cold and dank and impossible to keep warm. Above that is the clay seal. This isn't just any clay. It's been chosen carefully, tested. Some clays crack when they dry. Others remain soft, turning to mud with the slightest moisture. The clay used here is the kind that dries hard but not brittle, that creates a true barrier. It's been mixed, probably, with some organic material, grass or hair or crushed stone. This prevents excessive cracking and adds structural integrity. Then comes that thick plant layer. Archaeologists studying sites like the back of Sibudu Cave in South Africa and various European sites have found these plant layers preserved, sometimes dozens of stacked layers representing years of accumulated bedding. And here we must pause to honour a profound truth. This concept of a soft, prepared bed isn't just a reaction to the ice. It is a heritage, a winter survival skill that actually began in the heat. We now know that the very invention of bedding traces back to Africa, to places like Border Cave over 200,000 years ago. Long before any cavemen faced a glacier, our ancestors were already masters of comfort. Think about that connection. In the sweltering heat of the African cradle, they laid down broad leaves of the camphor bush, an aromatic plant akin to eucalyptus, specifically to repel mosquitoes and crawling insects. They built their nests on layers of ash to keep them clean. This knowledge travelled with us. It walked out of Africa, crossed continents, and adapted. The Stone Age sleeper in this frozen cave is using the same technology as their great-grandmother 10,000 times removed. They simply swapped the camphor bush for pine boughs, the mosquito for the frost. It is a touching realization. Even in this brutal cold, you are sleeping on a memory of home, an ancient technique of self-care that makes us uniquely human. And what they've found is fascinating. The plants aren't random. There's a selection happening. In some layers, they find rushes and sedges, tough plants from wetland margins. These provide structure, a kind of mattress spring effect. In other layers, softer grasses. In some cases, flowers. Not just any flowers, but aromatic ones. Tansy, which has insect-repellent properties. Mugwort, which is slightly sedative. Yarrow, which is anti-inflammatory and might help with aches and pains. Whether the Stone Age people understood these properties in a scientific sense is debatable. But they knew what worked. They knew that sleeping on a bed containing certain plants meant waking up less itchy, less bitten, perhaps even less sore. And so they gathered those plants, dried them, stored them, used them. The plant bedding served another purpose too. It was a calendar of sorts. Fresh bedding laid down in autumn would compress and decay slightly over the winter. By spring, it would be a thin, mat-like layer. When people returned the next winter, they'd often burn this old bedding, scatter the ash, and lay fresh material. So each layer represents a year. A winter survived. A story told in compressed grass. On top of the plants come the personal furs. And here the sophistication really shows. Because these aren't just random skins thrown down. They're curated, maintained, repaired. Each one is known. This large bearskin, for instance, the one serving as the primary sleeping surface. It came from a cave bear killed 3 winters ago in the very chamber where you now lie. The hunt was dangerous. Bears, even in hibernation, can wake suddenly. This one did. Wounded a hunter badly. But in the end, the bear fell. And its massive hide, well over 9 feet from nose to tail, was carefully skinned, fleshed, and cured. The process of preparing such a hide is labor-intensive. First, the skin must be removed from the carcass, a task requiring sharp stone knives and careful hands. Cut too deep and you damage the hide. Too shallow and you leave fat and meat attached, which will rot. Then comes fleshing, where you scrape away every bit of tissue from the underside of the skin. This is done with specialized scrapers, stone tools with a carefully shaped edge. The work is monotonous. Hours and hours of scraping, your hands cramping, your back aching. After fleshing comes the actual curing. For a winter hide, you want to keep the hair on. That hair is insulation, so you can't use some of the harsher curing methods that informed soaking the skin for weeks. Instead, you use fat and brains. Every mammal has enough brains to cure its own hide, as the saying goes among modern hide workers. And it's true. Brains contain oils and emulsifiers that, when worked into a hide, prevent it from rotting and make it supple. You take the brain of the bear, mix it with a little water, work it into a paste, then rub it into the flesh side of the hide. Let it sit. Then you work the hide, stretching and pulling and flexing it as it dries. This is crucial. A hide that dries without being worked will be stiff as a board, but one that's constantly manipulated while drying will be soft, flexible, almost like cloth. The result, after days of work, is a hide that's both warm and workable. The thick bear fur provides incredible insulation. The skin itself is tough, resistant to tearing, and it's large enough that one hide can cover 2 adults. But you don't sleep directly on this bear skin. That would be inefficient. The hair, when compressed by body weight, loses much of its insulating value. Instead, you place smaller furs on top, hair side up. These are often reindeer, caribou in modern terms. These northern deer were everywhere during the Ice Age, migrating in huge herds, and their fur is legendary. Each hair is hollow, filled with air. The fur is so effective at trapping warmth that you can watch reindeer lying on snow, and the snow beneath them doesn't melt. Their body heat is so thoroughly contained by their fur that it never reaches the ground. When you kill a reindeer, you take this gift of warmth for yourself. A reindeer hide, properly prepared with the hair on, is lightweight but incredibly warm. You might have 2 or 3 of these, some to lie on, others to pull over yourself like blankets. And here's a detail that shows the depth of knowledge. The positioning of these furs is not arbitrary. Reindeer fur has a grain, a direction. The hairs angle back from the head toward the tail. When you lie on a reindeer hide, you want the grain running from your head toward your feet. Why? Because this creates a subtle channeling effect for any moisture, sweat, breath condensation, or whatever dampness might accumulate will tend to wick down toward your feet rather than accumulating around your core. It's a tiny thing. Probably most people sleeping on these furs wouldn't consciously notice. But over a long winter, these tiny optimizations accumulate. They're the difference between waking up slightly damp and uncomfortable versus waking up relatively dry and rested. Now you're settled. Lying on your side, knees drawn up slightly, one arm tucked under your head as a pillow, the other pulled close to your chest. Around you, others are settling into similar positions. There's a quiet rustle as people adjust, a few murmured words, a child asking a question in a sleepy voice. The temperature in the chamber has stabilized. With everyone settled, generating heat but not moving around, the air has reached an equilibrium. Perhaps 45 or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold by modern standards, but combined with the fur insulation, enough. Your face is the only exposed part, and it's cool. but not painfully so. You close your eyes. Let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of the furs on top of you, a comforting pressure. And as you lie there, hovering between waking and sleep, you become aware of something remarkable. The darkness is absolute. With your eyes closed or open, it makes no difference. The chamber is completely black. The lamp, if there is one still burning, is somewhere else, its light not penetrating here. And in this darkness, your other senses heighten. You hear breathing, not just your own, but the breathing of everyone in the chamber. Each person has their own rhythm. The slow, deep breaths of the elder nearby, the quicker, softer breaths of the children. Someone snores, a gentle. In the darkness, in the cold, you are surrounded by your people. And their continued breathing means safety, means no predator has entered, means the fire has not gone out, the cave has not collapsed. The night is proceeding, or it might simply be that synced breathing means synced deep sleep. And a group all sleeping soundly at the same time is a group that's well rested, alert when they need to be. Whatever the you see snow falling. You see the face of a child laughing. This is the descent, the liminal, and then, sometime in the deepest part, the last thing you're aware of, before consciousness fades completely, is warmth. Not the heat of summer sun or a roaring fire, but the gentle, pervasive warmth of shared body heat, trapped fur, and stone that's absorbed the fire's gift over long hours. It's enough. More than enough. It's perfect. But let's rewind a moment. Before anyone lies down, before the chamber fills with the sound of sleeping breath, there are rituals, tasks that must be done. Because survival in these conditions isn't passive. It's an active, constant negotiation with danger. You've settled into the chamber, yes. But now, watching from your position on the furs, you see the night routine unfold. And it's this routine, performed with the same careful attention every night, that means waking up alive instead of frozen. The fire in the main chamber is the first concern. Always the fire. It's been allowed to die down to coals, which produces less smoke, but those coals must be managed with exquisite care. Let them die completely, and you'll spend a desperate hour in the cold trying to restart the fire with bow drill or strike a light methods, your numb fingers fumbling, your group's lives hanging on your success. But pile on too much fuel, and you'll create choking smoke, waste precious wood, perhaps even create enough heat to crack the hearthstones. Two people. Tonight it's a man and a woman, both middle-aged, both experienced, tend the coals. They work with practiced efficiency. First, they use a flat stone to scoop away loose ash, exposing the live coals underneath. This ash is not discarded. Nothing is wasted here. Instead, it's carefully collected in a leather bag. Later, some will be mixed into the bedding for its drying and deodorizing properties. Some might be mixed with fat to create a primitive paint or adhesive. Some will be used to scrub hides clean of grease. With the coals exposed, they evaluate. Are they hot enough? If you hold your hand above them, Do you have to pull away quickly, or can you hover for several seconds? The hotter the better, to a point. Hot coals mean you can add larger fuel without smothering them. Cool coals are finicky, requiring tiny twigs and careful blowing to nurse back to flame. Tonight, the coals are good, still radiating considerable heat. So the woman selects pieces of bone from a pile. Not huge mammoth leg bones, those are for cold mornings when you need maximum heat to warm up the cave after a long night. These are smaller. Ribs, perhaps. Vertebrae. Bones that will burn slowly, steadily, releasing their fat over hours. She places them carefully, not directly on the coals, but around them, creating a kind of teepee structure with space in the middle for air to flow. This is crucial. Fire needs oxygen. Smother it with fuel, even good fuel, and it dies. But give it space to breathe, and it will steadily consume what you've provided. The man is preparing a backup. He's making what would later be called a banking method. He takes the hottest coals and transfers them using 2 flat stones as tongs into a smaller, separate depression. These coals are then surrounded by ash, covered almost completely. The ash insulates them, keeps them alive, but burning incredibly slowly. Come morning, you can uncover these banked coals, blow on them, and have instant fire without the need to start from scratch. This technique is so effective that anthropologists studying indigenous groups have documented coals kept alive this way for days, even weeks. A group on the move might carry a specially designed container packed with banked coals, allowing them to transport fire across landscapes, never having to restart it. While the fire is being managed, others are seeing to personal needs. There's a section of the cave not far from the living areas, but separated by a natural rock formation that serves as a latrine. It's not pleasant. The smell is what you'd expect, but it's necessary. Waste has to go somewhere, and by concentrating it in one area, you keep the rest of the living space cleaner. In summer, waste might be buried outside, far from camp. But in winter, with snow 3 feet deep and the ground frozen solid, that's not practical. So the cave latrine it is. The smell is managed somewhat by covering waste with ash and, occasionally, by allowing very cold air to circulate through that section of the cave, which freezes the waste solid and reduces odor. It's not a perfect system. Nothing about winter survival in a cave is perfect, but it works. And more importantly, everyone knows the system. There's no confusion, no conflict. Children are taught from an early age. Waste goes there, not here. Food preparation happens here, not there. Sleeping furs are kept separate from work areas. This organization, this structure, is perhaps as important as any physical tool. Because in a group living in extremely close quarters for months, under conditions of stress and limited resources, social breakdown is a real danger. Arguments can escalate. Resentments can fester. But when everyone knows their role, their space, and their responsibilities, things run smoother. Someone is checking the water supply. Water is life, obviously, but in winter, water is also problematic. Outside, streams and springs are frozen. Snow can be melted, but that requires fuel, which is precious. Ice can be collected and melted, same problem. So what's done, when possible, is to find dripping water inside the cave itself. Most caves have some water movement, groundwater percolating through the limestone, and in places where this water emerges, dripping from the ceiling or seeping from a crack in the wall, you can collect it. It's cold, it's clear, and it requires no fuel to obtain. Near the entrance to your sleeping chamber, there's such a drip. Someone, years ago, positioned a large, flat stone beneath it, angled slightly so water collects in a natural depression. Drip by drip, over the course of hours, this stone basin fills. It's not much, a few litres by morning, but it's enough. Enough to drink, enough to cook with, enough to moisten a piece of leather that needs softening. Tonight, someone checks this basin, scoops a little water out with cupped hands, drinks, nods. It's good, clean. The stone is wiped down to remove any sediment, and then it's left to continue its slow connection. Children are being settled. This is perhaps the most important task of all, because children, especially young ones, don't understand the dangers the way adults do. A child who wanders off in the night, who stumbles toward the cave entrance, who knocks over a lamp, can cause disaster. So there are strategies. Younger children sleep between adults, literally sandwiched so they can't roll away without waking someone. Older children, who might need to relieve themselves in the night, are taught the path to the latrine area so thoroughly they could walk it blind, which, essentially, they do. And there are stories. Stories told around the fire, repeated until every child knows them by heart. Stories of what happens to those who wander in caves. Tales of spirits that live in the deep parts, in the passages no one enters. These stories aren't exactly true, but they serve a purpose. They create a psychological boundary. Children learn, we stay in the lit parts, in the familiar chambers. The deep darkness is not for us. One more task, and it's one you might not think of. Clothing maintenance. The hides and furs people wear during the day cannot be worn to sleep. They're contaminated, in a sense, with outside. They're cold. They might be damp from breath condensation or snow. They might have picked up ash or dirt. So people undress, partially at least. Heavy outer garments are removed, beaten to dislodge any ice or debris, then hung on natural rock projections or laid over stones near, but not too near, the fire. This drying process is crucial. Damp clothing in the morning is miserable to put on, and it's dangerous. It draws heat from your body, increases the risk of hypothermia. But you don't undress completely. The cave is too cold for that. You keep on your base layer, usually a tunic or shirt made of softer, more flexible leather. This layer is what's touching your skin, and it's somewhat less prone to freezing because it's kept warm by body heat. Tools are checked. Weapons are positioned within easy reach, not out of paranoia, but out of prudence. The cave's entrance is blocked by a loose arrangement of stones and hides, enough to break the wind, but not a sealed door. Could something get in? Could a large predator push through if it really wanted to? Probably. It's unlikely, but it's possible. So spears are nearby, stone hand axes, just in case. And finally, with all these tasks done, with the fire banked and the water collected and the children settled and the tools positioned and the clothing hung, there's a moment of pause, a collective breath. The work of staying alive is done for now. The night can truly begin. This is when the transition happens, when activity ceases and rest becomes possible. And it's marked, usually, by someone speaking, the elder often. A few words, not a formal prayer exactly, though there's something prayer-like about it. An acknowledgement of the day past, of the night to come, of the morning hoped for. The words vary. Tonight, the elder simply says, "The fire lives, we live. Sleep well." It's a formula, simple, but it contains everything. The fire is the symbol of human mastery, of warmth stolen from wood and bone, of light pushed back against darkness. If the fire lives, you live. And the fire will live through the night because it's been tended, because the skills have been applied, because the community has done its work. And with that, people settle. The rustling of furs, the quiet sighs. The chamber darkens as the last lamp is extinguished, the fat blown out. A tiny tendril of smoke curling up into blackness. The night routine is complete. Now comes the night itself. In our modern world, we've forgotten what true darkness is. Even in our darkest nights, there's ambient light. Street lights glow through curtains. The LED on a charging phone casts a tiny blue light. The clock glows. Something always intrudes. But here, now, in this Paleolithic chamber, there is nothing. The darkness is total, absolute. When the last lamp goes out, when the last ember in the distant fire chamber fades to black, you are in a darkness so complete that it becomes almost tangible. A presence rather than an absence. Close your eyes. Now open them. Do you notice any difference? Neither do the people sleeping around you. Open or closed, the eyes receive exactly the same input. Nothing. Neuroscience has studied this. When your eyes are deprived of input for extended periods, strange things happen. Your visual cortex, that part of your brain dedicated to processing sight, doesn't just shut down. It continues to fire, to create activity. But without real input, the patterns it generates are random. You start to see things that aren't there, shapes, colors, movement. These are called phosphenes, and they can be startlingly vivid. For a person sleeping in a dark cave, these internal visions might blend with dreams in interesting ways. The boundary between waking hallucination and sleeping dream becomes blurred. And some researchers think this might be part of the origin of shamanic visions, of spirit journeys, of the rich inner world that Paleolithic art seems to suggest. But beyond the visual, darkness does something else. It shifts your sense of self, your sense of space. In light, you navigate by landmarks, by visible boundaries. But in darkness, especially absolute darkness, those references vanish. You could be in a small room or a vast cavern. Without sight, you can't tell. This can be disorienting, frightening even. Modern people placed in such darkness often report anxiety, claustrophobia, a sense of the walls closing in or falling away. But for someone raised in this environment, for whom darkness is normal, the response is different. You learn to trust your other senses. Hearing becomes primary, touch becomes crucial, and you develop an almost sixth sense about space, about the position of your body relative to unseen objects. Right now, lying on your furs, you can't see the ceiling above you, can't see the walls, can't see the other people. But you know where they are. You can hear them breathing, can sense the warmth of their bodies. And your proprioception, that internal map your brain maintains of your body's position, tells you you're lying down, tells you which way is up, keeps you oriented even without visual confirmation. There's a peacefulness to this once you accept it. The darkness stops being threatening and becomes encompassing, like being held. You're small in the darkness, vulnerable, but you're also hidden, protected. Nothing can see you, which means nothing can target you. The darkness is democratic. In light, you can see differences, who's larger and stronger, who has better tools, finer clothing. But in darkness, all that vanishes. Everyone is equal. Just voices, just presence, just the fundamental fact of being human. And maybe this is part of why people in these times were so closely bonded. When you spend half your life in absolute darkness, unable to see differences, you're forced to interact based on sound, on memory, on the content of someone's character rather than superficial appearances. You know people by their voice, their laugh, their breathing rhythm, by how they move in darkness, whether they're confident or hesitant, by whether they share their warmth, their food, their stories. The darkness also does something to time perception. Without visual cues, without the ability to see the sun's position or the stars, time becomes elastic. Subjective. You might think an hour has passed when it's been only minutes. Or you might suddenly realize the entire night has slipped by in what felt like moments. Experiments done with people isolated in caves without clocks or natural light have shown that the human circadian rhythm is not exactly 24 hours. It's closer to 25. And in the absence of external time cues called Zeitgebers, that internal clock tends to drift. People start going to bed later and later, waking later and later, their day-night cycle slowly rotating. But in a community, in a group sharing space, social cues provide synchronization. You don't sleep when your body says to sleep. You sleep when the group sleeps. You wake when the group stirs. This keeps everyone on roughly the same schedule, which is crucial for cooperation, for coordinated activity. Still, there are variations. As mentioned earlier, different people have different chronotypes. Some are naturally early to bed, early to rise. Others are night owls. And in a cave, in the long winter night, these differences create a natural watch system. The elders tend to sleep early and wake early. So, in the deepest part of the night, when most people are in their first sleep, an elder might be awake, sitting by the banked fire, listening, making sure nothing goes wrong. Then they sleep again, their second sleep, while the younger adults are waking, restless, tending to their own needs. By dawn, the young children are stirring, full of energy despite the cold, and it's the elders again who wake to tend them, while the middle-aged adults, the hunters and gatherers, grab the last precious hour of rest before the demands of the day. This staggered waking means the cave is never completely undefended, never silent. There's always someone aware, even if only dimly. Always someone to notice if a child cries, if a noise comes from the entrance, if something, anything, goes wrong. It's a system perfected over thousands of years. A system that worked so well that humans spread across the entire world, surviving in environments from tropical rainforests to Arctic tundras, always adapting, always finding a way. And you're part of that system now. Lying in the darkness, your breathing slowed, your mind drifting. You're aware on some level of the people around you, of the cold air on your face contrasting with the warmth of the furs, of the utter silence broken only by breath and the occasional crackle from the distant fire as a bone settles in the coals. This is the psychological space of Stone Age sleep. Not unconsciousness, not oblivion, but a different kind of consciousness. A resting awareness. A state where dreams and waking thoughts blend. Where time has no meaning. Where the self becomes less distinct and more part of the collective. Modern people experiencing this for the first time often describe it as meditative, like a waking dream. And maybe that's accurate. Maybe this is the state our minds evolved to enter during rest. And maybe the fragmented, anxious sleep so many people experience today is a symptom of being pulled away from this natural state. In the darkness, thoughts arise and fade without drama. You think about tomorrow, but the thought has no urgency. You remember the past, but without dwelling. You notice sensation, the touch of fur against your cheek, but without analyzing. It's peaceful, deeply, profoundly peaceful. And in this peace, true rest becomes possible. Let's drift back even further now. Not just 30,000 years, but deeper, into the origins of the very thing that makes this cave survivable. The thing that separates humans from every other creature in this ice-bound world. Fire. The mastery of fire is humanity's first great turning point. Our first true technology. The thing that changed everything. Before fire, humans were just another primate. Strong, yes. Clever, certainly. But bound by the same rules as all animals. We could only eat raw food, which meant we needed massive jaws and powerful digestive systems to process it. We could only live where the climate was temperate enough that our hairless bodies wouldn't freeze. We were active only during daylight because darkness held too many dangers. Fire changed all of that. With fire, we could cook. And cooked food delivers far more calories from the same amount of material. Meat that would be tough and difficult to digest raw becomes tender and nutritious when cooked. Plant toxins that would sicken us are broken down by heat. Suddenly, a much wider range of foods became available. With fire, we could stay warm, could move into cold climates, could survive winters that would have killed us otherwise. The range of habitable environments expanded exponentially. With fire, we could see in the dark, could extend our active hours, could socialize, tell stories, work on tools long after sunset. The firelight created a gathering space, a center around which social life organized. And with evidence from sites in Africa and Europe shows clear hearths controlled fires from hundreds of thousands of years before the modern humans we're imagining tonight even existed. But using fire and making fire are different things. Early humans might have captured fire from natural sources, lightning strikes, volcanic eruptions, spontaneous combustion in dry forests, and then maintained it, carrying embers from camp to camp, never letting it die. The ability to create fire on demand, to start it from nothing using only tools and technique, came later. And it's harder than you might think. Striker-light methods, using rocks like flint and iron pyrite to create sparks, work but require the right materials. Bow drill methods, using friction to create an ember in wood dust, work but require specific wood types, proper technique, and a lot of effort. In winter, with cold, numbed fingers and damp materials, starting a fire from scratch can take an hour or more. Can fail entirely if conditions aren't right. Which is why such care is taken to never let the fire go out. Why coals are banked. Why embers are transported. Because fire is precious. Irreplaceable. The people sleeping around you tonight carry knowledge about fire that's been accumulated over hundreds of generations. They know which woods burn hot and which burn long. They know that resinous woods like pine create excellent light, but dangerous sparks. They know that hardwoods like oak burn slowly and steadily, but are hard to ignite. They know that bone, especially marrow-rich bone, burns with a greasy, hot flame that's perfect for long winter nights. They know the signs of a good fire, the color of the flames, the way the smoke rises. They can tell, just by looking, whether a fire has enough oxygen or is being smothered, whether it's hot enough to cook on or needs more fuel. And they understand fire's dual nature. It's life-giving, but it's also incredibly dangerous. A fire that escapes control in a cave is a death trap. The smoke alone can kill, filling the confined space with choking fumes. The heat can become unbearable, forcing people out into the killing cold. And if the fire spreads to bedding, to stored materials, everything can be lost in minutes. So there are rules. Never leave a fire untended. Never build it too large. Always maintain a supply of dirt or sand to smother flames if needed. Always know where the exits are. These rules are taught to children as soon as they're old enough to understand. Before they're allowed to add fuel to a fire, they practice on cold hearths. They learn to judge distance, to place wood carefully rather than tossing it. They learn that fire
is a tool, as much as any stone scraper or spear, and like any tool, it must be mastered. There are stories about fire too, origin stories. Different groups probably had different versions, but the themes were often similar. Fire was a gift,
sometimes from the gods or spirits, sometimes stolen from them. And that gift came with responsibility. To use fire wisely, to keep it alive, to pass it on. Some anthropologists think that the practice of maintaining a constant fire, of never letting it go out, had deep symbolic meaning beyond the practical. The fire was the life of the community. As long as it burned, the community lived. If it died, symbolically, the community died too. Whether that's true or an interpretation is debatable. But what's undeniable is that fire was central to everything. It was the first thing established when making camp, the last thing left when moving on. It was the marker of human presence, the beacon of civilization, however small and fragile, in a vast wilderness. Tonight, that fire is your lifeline. Distant now, in another chamber, but you can still smell the smoke, faint but present. And you know, without having to check, that it's alive. Because if it had gone out, someone would have raised the alarm. The rush of activity, the urgency in voices would have woken everyone. But there's no alarm, just silence. Just the steady rhythm of sleeping breaths. Just the knowledge, deep and unquestioned, that the fire lives. And so you live. And so sleep deepens, dreams begin, and the night continues its slow arc toward dawn. In the darkness, the boundary between waking and dreaming blurs. And this is where the spirit world lived for Paleolithic people. Not as metaphor, not as symbol, but as experienced reality. You're asleep now, deeply asleep. But on some level, you're still aware. Your brain is processing the environment, monitoring for threats, maintaining that baseline vigilance that kept your ancestors alive. And as it does this work, it creates dreams. The dreams of Stone Age people were probably not so different from ours. The brain hasn't changed much in 30,000 years. The same neurons fire, the same neurotransmitters ebb and flow. Sleep cycles through stages. Light sleep, deep sleep. REM sleep, where eyes move rapidly beneath closed lids and the mind creates vivid, bizarre narratives. But the content of dreams, the imagery and symbolism, was shaped by the lived world. And that world was very different from ours. You dream, perhaps, of animals. This is natural. Your waking life revolves around animals. The reindeer you hunt, the mammoth whose meat sustains you, the wolves whose howls sometimes echo in the night, the cave bear whose skin you sleep on. But in the dream, the animals are not quite real. They're larger than life. They speak, perhaps, though not in words. They convey meaning directly, mind to mind. They transform. A reindeer becomes a human becomes a bird. The boundaries that seem so solid in waking life dissolve. Some anthropologists believe that much of Paleolithic art, the paintings found deep in caves, the carvings on small stones and bones,
represent attempts to capture these dream visions, to make them solid, to bring the spirit world into the physical. Consider the cave paintings, found in places like Lascaux, Chauvet, Altamira. They're located deep in the caves, not in the living areas, not where daily life happened, but in chambers that required deliberate journeys into darkness, into the deep earth.
Why there? If the art was simply decoration, why not put it where people could see it easily, in the fire-lit living spaces? But it's not there. It's hidden, remote, often in places that are difficult and dangerous to reach. One theory, supported by acoustic studies and ethnographic parallels, is that these deep chambers were ceremonial spaces, places where visions were sought, where the boundary between worlds was thin. The journey to reach them would have been intentional, a procession, perhaps, led by someone experienced, carrying lamps or torches, moving through narrow passages, wading through underground streams, crawling through tight spaces. The physical challenge, the sensory deprivation of absolute darkness, the fear and anticipation, all would have created an altered state of consciousness. And then, finally, arrival. In a chamber where the walls seemed alive with shadows, where the lamp's flicker made painted animals seem to move, where sound echoed strangely, where a shout or a song could reverberate for seconds, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. In such a place, the spirit world would feel close, accessible. The animals on the walls were not just art. They were presences, spirits, beings from the dream realm made visible. We can deduce this not just from the stones, but from the living voices of those who still remember the old ways. When we look at ethnographic parallels, the stories of the Dunza hunters of Canada or the Nganasan shamans of Siberia, we see that for a hunter-gatherer, dreaming is a practical winter survival skill. It is not fantasy, it is a scouting mission. In these cultures, it is believed that the animal gives itself to the hunter in a dream first. A hunter might wake up and say, "I saw the caribou by the crooked birch tree." And the group listens. They don't scoff. They treat this as reliable data. Why? Because to the cavemen, or rather the highly observant human of the Stone Age, the subconscious mind is a supercomputer. While you are awake, your eyes notice the slight bend of the grass. Your nose catches the faintest shift in the wind. Your ears hear the absence of birdsong. Your conscious mind is too busy to process it all. But when you descend into that cave-dark sleep, your brain crunches the data. It connects the dots. The spirit showing you the location of the herd is actually your own intuition, speaking to you in the language of symbols. Imagine the Mistassini Cree drummers who play to induce a trance, travelling mentally to find the track of the elk. The Paleolithic sleeper did the same. This wasn't superstition, it was a survival strategy. The dream guides the hunt because the dream is the truest map of the landscape you possess. There's evidence that some of these chambers were used for ritual. Footprints preserved in the cave mud show people dancing, sometimes in circles, sometimes back and forth. The prints of children often, suggesting some kind of coming-of-age ceremony. The prints sometimes show that people were standing on their toes, or spinning, or moving in ways that would be exhausting and that would induce trance. And there's evidence of sound making. Not just voices, but instruments. Bone flutes have been found dating to this period. Simple but effective, capable of producing clear, haunting notes. Imagine that sound in a deep cave. The melody echoing, overlapping with itself, creating harmonies that no single flute could produce. Or drumming. The caves themselves could be drums. In some locations, researchers have found sections of wall or ceiling that resonate when struck. These aren't random. They're often marked, painted, indicating that someone, sometime, recognized the acoustic property and used it. Strike such a rock with a bone or wooden mallet, and a deep, resonant boom fills the chamber. Not a sharp crack, but a lingering tone that seems to come from the earth itself. Strike it rhythmically, and you create a pulse, a heartbeat, that your own heart starts to sync with. All of this, the darkness, the journey, the art, the sound, was designed to induce altered consciousness, to open the door to the spirit world, and in that state, people experienced things, visions, communications with animal spirits, guidance from ancestors, promises of successful hunts, warnings of danger. Were these visions real? That's not the right question. They were real to the people experiencing them. They had psychological reality, social reality, cultural reality, and they served functions. They bonded the group. They provided meaning. They helped people process fear and trauma. They reinforced behavioral norms and cultural knowledge. In your dream, now, some of this might be present. The cave around you is not just physical space, but also spiritual space. The darkness is inhabited. The silence speaks. And the animals, the spirits, the ancestors, they're all here, watching, waiting, part of the web of life and death that you're woven into. You dream of fire. Of course you do. Fire is life. And in the dream, the fire speaks, tells you where to hunt, tells you who is trustworthy, tells you that spring will come, that the long darkness will end, that survival is possible. You dream of cold, of the wind outside, but in the dream, the cold is a being, an entity, something with intention. It wants in, wants to consume the warmth, but it can't, because of the fire, because of the furs, because of the people huddled together. The cold is powerful, but community is stronger. And you dream, perhaps, of those who are gone, the elder who died last winter, the child who fell through ice. They're not dead in the dream, or rather, they're dead but still present, still part of the group, still offering wisdom, still sharing warmth, still singing the old songs. This is what ancestor veneration might have looked like in practice. Not formal worship, not temples or priests, just the simple fact that the dead lived on in dreams, in memories, in stories told by firelight. They were not forgotten. They could not be forgotten, because memory was survival. The knowledge they carried, the experiences they had, these had to be preserved, passed on. So they lived in dreams. And sometimes, in the darkness between first and second sleep, when you woke briefly, You might lie there remembering the dream, remembering the message, and it would blend with waking thought, with planning, with the practical concerns of survival. Should we move camp tomorrow? The ancestor in the dream said to wait, so we wait. Should we cross the frozen river? The animal spirit in the dream warned against it, so we find another way. These decisions, guided by dreams, by spirits, by the deep wisdom of the unconscious mind, often turned out to be good decisions.
Not because of magic, but because the unconscious mind, processing information from the environment, from social cues, from accumulated experience, could sometimes arrive at conclusions before the conscious mind did. The dream was a way of accessing that processing, of bringing it to awareness. So the spirit world, in a sense, was the unconscious world, the realm of pattern recognition, of intuition, of knowing without knowing how you know. And by taking it seriously, by honoring it, by creating rituals around it, people accessed a kind of wisdom that pure conscious reasoning might miss. In your sleep, these processes continue. Your brain sorts memories, strengthens some connections, prunes others, processes the emotions of the day, rehearses skills so that tomorrow's hunt or tomorrow's hide scraping will be slightly smoother, slightly more efficient. Sleep is not downtime. It's active, necessary, as vital to survival as food or water. And in the perfect darkness of the cave, with the absolute quiet, with the security of the group around you, sleep does its work thoroughly. Hours pass, dreams come and go. The spirit animals dance, the ancestors speak. The fire burns on in the other chamber, a constant note of warmth and safety at the edge of awareness. And then, slowly, the quality of sleep changes. You're rising up from the deep, not to full wakefulness, not yet, but to that halfway place, the space between first and second sleep. It's time for the watch. You surface from sleep the way a diver surfaces from deep water. Gradually, in stages, your consciousness flickering on like a weak flame catching hold. For a moment, you don't know where you are. The darkness is so complete that there are no reference points. You could be anywhere, nowhere, floating in void. But then sensation returns. The weight of furs on top of you, the firmness of the bedding beneath, the cool air on your face contrasting with the warmth of your cocooned body. And sound, the breathing of others, slower now, deeper, the sound of people in their deepest sleep. You're awake. Not fully alert, but aware. And you know why. This is your time. Your body's internal clock, trained by years of this routine, has woken you for the watch. You don't move immediately. First, you listen. Is there anything wrong? Any sound that shouldn't be there? Any absence of sound that should be present? The distant fire is still crackling softly. Good. The breathing around you is peaceful. No one is coughing, gasping, showing signs of illness or distress. The cave itself is quiet. No sounds of falling rock, no rush of water, no scrabbling of claws. Everything is as it should be.
so you can move. Carefully, you extract yourself from the furs. This is an art in itself. You don't want to let cold air rush in under the layers. Don't want to disturb the warmth you've built up. So you move slowly. Peel back one layer at a time, letting your body adjust to each new temperature. When you finally sit up, the cold hits your torso. It's shocking. Just moments ago, you were perfectly warm. Now you're shivering. But you know this will pass. You grope in the darkness for the heavier fur you left nearby. Find it. Wrap it around your shoulders like a cloak. Standing is the next challenge. The ceiling is low here. You've cracked your head on stone before, in the darkness, by standing too quickly. So you rise carefully, hands extended above you, feeling for the ceiling. Find it. Duck beneath it. Now you're standing, or rather crouching, the fur cloak tight around you. Your eyes are wide open, but useless. You can't see anything, not even your hand in front of your face. So you navigate by memory and touch. You know this chamber. You know the position of the sleeping bodies, the location of the passage that leads to the main chamber. You shuffle forward, feet sliding rather than stepping so you don't trip over someone or something. Your hands are out, ready to catch yourself if you stumble. And after perhaps a dozen shuffling steps, you feel it, the change in air, the passage opening. The temperature drops immediately. The main chamber, with its higher ceiling and proximity to the outside, is colder. But it's also where the fire is, and you can smell the smoke more strongly now. Can see, just barely, the faintest hint of red glow ahead. The banked coals. As you move toward them, the glow strengthens. It's not much, just a dull red like distant embers. But to eyes that have been in absolute darkness, it's brilliant. It guides you, and as you approach, you begin to see shapes. The hearthstones, black against the red coals, the walls of the chamber, flickering in and out of visibility, and a figure. Someone else is here. It's the elder, the one who tended the fire before sleeping. He's awake, sitting by the coals, wrapped in furs. He nods as you approach, doesn't speak. There's no need. You settle across from him, close enough to feel the radiant heat from the coals, and, for a moment, you both just sit. This is the watch. Not a formal duty, not assigned, but it happens naturally. Different people waking at different times in the night, drawn to the fire, keeping it company, keeping it alive. The elder reaches out with a stick, pokes at the coals. A few sparks fly up, tiny stars in the darkness. He adds a small piece of bone to the coals. It's been saved for this, positioned nearby. As the bone heats, it begins to release its fat, and the coals flare slightly, gaining strength. You watch this process. There's something meditative about it, the slow transformation of matter into heat and light, the way the flames lick along the bone, finding the richest veins of marrow, burning blue where fats are concentrated. In the improved light, you can see more of the chamber now. Tools leaning against the wall, bundles of supplies. The entrance, where the stone and hide barrier creates a dark rectangle against the lesser darkness of the cave mouth beyond. And you can see the elder's face, lined, weathered, eyes reflecting firelight. He's old, maybe 50, which in this era is ancient. Most people don't live this long, but he has. And the knowledge in his head, the accumulated experience of half a century of winters, of successful hunts and near-death escapes, of weather patterns and animal behavior, of which plants heal and which poison, of how to read tracks and predict storms. All of that is invaluable. He speaks, finally. Not a loud voice, just a low rumble. Dream well? You nod. Animals, the reindeer herds, moving south. He considers this. South? Yes. They'd be moving now, through the low pass. This moment right here, this quiet exchange, is the essence of a winter survival skill that goes beyond fire or fur. It is the validation of the inner world. In the Stone Age, a dream is not dismissed as just a dream. It is treated as intelligence. If you were a modern person, you might doubt yourself, but here the elder validates you. He connects your dream of the South to his knowledge of the migration. The ethnographic parallels are striking. Just as an elder in the Kalahari might interpret a trance dance, this elder interprets your night vision. It creates a seamless web between the waking world and the sleeping world, making the group stronger, more cohesive. The cavemen survived not just because they had spears, but because they trusted their own minds. This is information. The dream mentioned south. His knowledge confirms the pass. Tomorrow, or soon, the hunters will go south to the low pass, expecting to find the herds. The dream has provided guidance, or rather your unconscious mind, processing information about the season, the weather, the patterns learned over years, has reached a conclusion and presented it as a dream. And the elder's waking knowledge validates it. This is how decisions are made, not through debate or voting, but through this quiet sharing. Dream and knowledge, intuition and experience, the old ways and the observed world. He adds another piece to the fire. The heat builds. For a few minutes, the chamber is genuinely warm. Not just survivable, but almost comfortable. You both savor it. Other sounds now, from the sleeping chamber. Someone else stirring. A child's voice, murmuring in sleep. A cough. The sounds of life continuing even in the deepest night. The elder hands you something. A piece of dried meat saved from dinner. You weren't hungry, but you take it. Chew it. It's tough, requires work, but the flavor is good, rich, and you realize you are hungry, actually. The body, even in sleep, burns calories, needs fuel. You share the fire in silence for a while. Then, duty done, coals tended, you rise. The elder nods again. He might stay a while longer, or he might return to sleep. It doesn't matter. The fire will live. Someone will always be there. You navigate back through darkness to the sleeping chamber, find your furs, slip beneath them, and the warmth you left there is still present. trapped, waiting. You burrow into it gratefully. Around you, others are in their own cycles, some in deep sleep, some dreaming, some in that liminal space between. The breathing is out of sync now, no longer the harmonized rhythm of earlier. But that's fine. This is the middle of the night, when individual rhythms take precedence. You close your eyes. Not that it makes a difference in the darkness, but the intention is there. Sleep. Return to dreams. Let the second sleep come. And it does. Easier this time. Because you've checked, you've done your part. The fire lives, the people are safe. The night is passing as it should. You descend again into the deep. And the dreams that come now are different, softer, less about hunting, about animals, about survival, more about connection, about warmth, about the simple pleasure of being alive. You dream of spring. Of course, everyone dreams of spring in the deep winter. But this isn't desperate longing. It's anticipation, patience, the knowledge that seasons turn, that cold always eventually gives way to warmth, that ice melts and grass grows and the world renews itself. The ancestors knew this, lived through countless winters, and each time spring came. So it will come again. This is faith. Not religious faith necessarily, but faith in the pattern, in the reliability of the world, in the promise encoded in the very structure of existence that after darkness comes light, after cold comes warmth, after death comes life. And in this faith there is deep peace. You sleep deeply, completely. The second sleep, often the deepest sleep, when the body does its most important repair work, when growth hormones are released, when immune systems are strengthened, when memory consolidation reaches its peak. Hours pass. The cave breathes. The fire burns low but never dies. People wake, tend it, return to sleep. The pattern continues, as it has for thousands of years, as it will for thousands more. The rhythm of survival, the dance of winter life. Dawn is still hours away, but you're aware on some deep level that the night is aging, moving toward its conclusion. The quality of sleep changes again, becomes lighter. You're no longer in the deepest troughs, but riding the gentle waves near the surface. Images come and go. Not quite dreams, but not quite waking thoughts. Impressions, feelings, memories from the day blending with imaginings of tomorrow. You see the entrance of the cave, not from inside, but from outside, looking in. And it occurs to you that the cave is like a giant mouth, the mouth of the earth. And you're inside, swallowed, digesting through the night, to be spit back out into the world come morning. It's not a frightening image. It's comforting. The earth holds you, protects you. You're in the belly of the world, and the world is not malicious. It's indifferent, yes, Dangerous, absolutely, but also, in its way, nurturing. It provides shelter, stability. The cave has stood for thousands of years, will stand for thousands more. Human lifespans are brief flickers against that timescale. You think about all the people who have slept in this exact spot, generations of them, lying on similar furs, breathing similar air, sustained by similar fires. People whose names are long forgotten, but whose lives were no less real, no less filled with joy and fear and love and pain than yours. They slept here, dreamed here, woke to continue their struggles. And eventually, they died, and others took their place, and so on and so on. An unbroken chain of human persistence stretching back through time until the very origins of the species. You're part of that chain, a single link, but connected to all the others. The ancestors you'll never know, the descendants you'll never meet. All sleeping in caves or under stars or in shelters yet to be invented. All struggling against the same fundamental challenges, all sharing the same basic needs. Warmth, safety, food, connection. It's strange how modern life can make us feel isolated, unique, separate. But here, now, in this ancient context, you feel the opposite. You feel profoundly connected to the people sleeping around you, obviously, but also to everyone who has ever struggled through a hard winter. Everyone who has ever maintained a fire against the darkness. Everyone who has ever said, in whatever language, "We will survive this, together." The furs against your skin are not just animal hides. They're the gift of those animals. Their warmth given so that you might live. You didn't kill the bear yourself, but someone did. Someone brave and skilled and desperate. They took a life so that lives might continue. And there's gratitude in that recognition, not guilt, but awareness of the price. Everything here in this cave has come at a price. The firewood gathered during autumn, hours of labour hauling it to the cave. The bedding prepared, days of work processing plants. The food stored, hunts completed, meat preserved. The furs sewn, countless hours of scraping and softening and stitching. Winter survival skills aren't about one dramatic act. They're about 1,000 small preparations, 1,000 careful actions, each one necessary, each one the difference between comfort and misery, between living and dying. And the knowledge, the accumulated wisdom. That's perhaps the most important thing, more precious than any tool or fur or store of food. Because objects can be lost. But knowledge, once learned, once truly internalized, is carried forever. Passed on through teaching and observation and story. The children sleeping nearby, they're learning even now, not consciously, but their bodies are learning what cold feels like, what hunger feels like, what safety feels like. They're forming memories, laying down neural pathways that will guide them for the rest of their lives. When they're adults, they'll know, without having to think about it, how to prepare a sleeping space, how to judge the quality of firewood, how to read the signs of changing weather, Not because someone sat them down for a lesson, but because they lived it, absorbed it, became it. This is the true meaning of culture. Not art or ritual, though those are parts of it, but the lived knowledge of how to be human in a specific environment. How to extract life from conditions that seem to permit only death. The Ice Age forced innovations that still echo today. Fire management, clothing technology, food preservation, social cooperation, language, probably, developing to its full complexity out of the sheer necessity of communicating detailed information about survival strategies. But these innovations weren't sudden. They built over thousands of years, each generation adding a tiny refinement, a slightly better way to scrape a hide, a slightly more efficient fire lay, a new plant discovered to have useful properties. Progress measured not in great leaps, but in tiny incremental improvements, each one giving a slight edge, a marginally better chance of surviving to reproduce, to pass on the innovation. And now, all that accumulated wisdom is here, in this cave, in the people sleeping around you. They are the inheritors of an unbroken chain of successful survival strategies, stretching back to the origins of humanity. They are here because their ancestors were successful, were clever, were adaptable, were, in a word, worthy. And so are you. There's a tendency in modern times to romanticize the past or to condemn it, to imagine people of the Stone Age as either noble savages living in harmony with nature or as brutish, miserable creatures barely surviving. The reality is neither. They were people, fully human, with the same capacity for thought and feeling that we have. They loved, they laughed, they created beauty. They also fought, they suffered, they failed. But they persisted. Through the worst climate humans would face until the modern era, through the last glacial maximum when ice covered half the world and the rest was barely habitable. They persisted. And because they did, you exist. We all exist. Every human alive today is descended from people who survived the Ice Age, who made it through winters like this, who kept the fire alive. That persistence, that refusal to surrender to cold and darkness, is part of our inheritance, part of what it means to be human. We are, all of us, children of winter survivors, carriers of knowledge paid for with the lives of those who didn't quite figure it out in time. And maybe that's why stories like this, stories of ancient survival, resonate. They remind us of what we're made of, not physically, but in terms of spirit, in terms of will. We come from people who refused to quit, who faced impossible odds and said, "We'll find a way." They did. And here you are, thousands of years later, warm and safe, in a modern world they couldn't have imagined, but carrying their genes, their patterns of thought, their capacity for endurance. The cave around you is silent now. The deepest part of the night has passed. The second sleep is ending. And though you can't see it, can't know it consciously, The first faint lightening of the sky is beginning outside. Dawn is still an hour away, maybe more. But it's coming. Your body knows. Evolution has equipped you with an incredible biological clock. Even without seeing the sun, even here in the absolute darkness of the cave, your body tracks the passing hours, knows within a margin of minutes what time it is, and begins, slowly, to prepare for waking. Your sleep becomes even lighter. You're right at the surface now. Any sound, any change would bring you fully awake. But there's no need. Everything is well. The fire lives. The people live. The night has been survived. And in this light sleep, this almost waking, there's a particular quality of consciousness that's hard to describe. You're resting, but you're also aware. Thoughts drift by like clouds, observed but not engaged with. Time both stretches and compresses. Minutes feel like hours. Hours feel like minutes. This is the space where creativity lives, where solutions to problems present themselves unbidden, where the connections between disparate ideas suddenly become clear. The liminal space, the threshold, the edge of sleep. Many of humanity's best ideas have probably come in moments like this. Lying in the darkness, not quite asleep, not quite awake. The mind free to wander and make unexpected connections. The inventor who suddenly sees how to solve a problem. The artist who visualizes the composition. The hunter who realizes where the herd must have gone. You're in that space now, and ideas do come. Not urgent ones, just observations, thoughts. The ice near the cave mouth is getting thicker. We should clear it, or someone will slip. The supply of sinew for sewing is running low. We should process some tendon from the next kill. That child's cough last night. It might be nothing, but worth watching. These thoughts aren't worries, they're just notes. Mental bookmarks for tomorrow. And having acknowledged them, you let them go. They'll still be there in the morning. For now, rest. The breathing around you is changing. Others are beginning to rise toward waking. You can hear it in the rhythm. Shallower breaths, a cough, a sigh, the rustle of someone shifting position. The night watch is almost over. Soon, someone will rise, will move to the main chamber, will unbank the coals and blow them to life, will add substantial fuel. The fire will blaze up, sending light and heat through the cave. Smoke will begin to accumulate again in the upper chamber, and the transition from night to day will have begun. But not yet. For a few more precious minutes, it's still night. Still the deep, restful darkness. Still the time of sleep and dreams and renewal. And you savor it. This peace. This safety. This perfect moment of suspension before the demands of the day return. You think, one last time, of the people who've slept here before you. The grandmother who taught you how to sew. The father who taught you to hunt. The siblings who shared warmth through a dozen winters. the friends who laughed with you in summer and huddled close in winter. Some are gone now, claimed by sickness or accident or simply age. But they're not absent. They're here, in the knowledge you carry, in the skills you practice, in the stories you tell. Death takes the body, but the essence, the learning, the contribution to the collective, that remains. That gets passed down. That becomes immortal. And one day, you too will be gone. Your body will return to the earth. But what you've learned, what you've taught to the children now sleeping nearby, that will continue, will be refined by the next generation, passed on to the one after that. Your individual life is brief, but your contribution to the ongoing project of human survival is eternal. That's the real meaning of the ancestors. Not ghosts, not spirits watching from some other realm, but the accumulated wisdom of all who came before, living on in the practices and knowledge of the living. When you scrape a hide the way your father taught you, he's there. When you place firewood the way your grandmother showed you, she's there. They live on through you, through your actions, through your care in doing things the right way, the tested way, the way that keeps people alive. And the children will carry you forward, will remember your lessons, will do things your way, and teach their children, and so on, forever. The chain unbreaking, the fire always maintained, the knowledge always passed on. Humanity persisting through winter after winter, challenge after challenge, never stopping, never quitting, always adapting, always learning, always surviving. This is the true story of the Stone Age. Not a story of misery and cold, but a story of triumph, of humans facing the harshest conditions and not just surviving, but thriving, creating art, developing language, building social structures that would carry forward into the modern world. You're part of that story. A brief chapter, but a real one. Your life matters. Your struggles matter. Your small victories over cold and hunger and fear matter, because they contribute to the larger story, the epic of human persistence. And with that thought, with that connection to something larger than yourself, you finally, fully, completely relax. Let go. Surrender to the remaining moments of sleep, knowing that when you wake, you'll face challenges, but you'll face them with your people, with fire and fur and accumulated knowledge, with the strength of ancestors behind you and descendants ahead of you, with the certainty that winter always ends, that spring always comes, that survival is possible. The darkness is perfect. The warmth is sufficient. The breathing around you is the sound of life continuing. You are here. You are warm. You are safe. And that is enough. That has always been enough. That will always be enough. Sleep, the faintest change in the darkness. Not light, not yet, but a quality, a sense. Your body knows. It's morning. Around you, others are stirring. The communal waking, slow, gentle. No alarms, no urgency. Just the natural rise toward consciousness as the long night releases its hold. Someone has already moved to the fire. You can hear it now. The sounds you've been unconsciously monitoring all night becoming conscious. The crackle intensifying, the snap of fresh wood catching, the glow strengthening, pushing back the darkness. You stretch beneath the furs. Your body is stiff. It always is after a night in the cave. The cold seeps into joints, makes muscles tight. But you're alive. You're whole. You made it through another night. And that's everything. In the main chamber, there will be work soon. The fire to build up properly, food to prepare, ice to clear from the entrance, the endless tasks of winter survival. But for now, just this moment, there's peace. The satisfaction of having survived the night, the relief of seeing another dawn. It's easy from our modern perspective to pity these ancient people, to see their lives as nothing but hardship and struggle. But that's not the whole story. Yes, life was hard. Yes, death was always close. But there was also this. The warmth of community, the satisfaction of skills mastered, the deep peace of sleeping surrounded by family, by tribe, by people who would literally die to protect you, and for whom you'd do the same. There was beauty, the play of firelight on stone walls, the intricate patterns of frost, the sound of children laughing even in the depths of winter, the stories told, the songs sung, the moments of joy snatched from the jaws of hardship. And there was knowledge, the proud knowledge that you understood the world, could read its signs, knew where to find food, how to predict weather, when to move and when to stay. You were competent, capable, not a passive victim of forces beyond your control, but an active participant in your own survival. These cave dwellers, these Stone Age people, they weren't primitives. They were sophisticated, masters of an incredibly complex body of knowledge, experts at living in one of the harshest climates Earth has ever seen. And they did it without any of the technology we take for granted. No metal, no ceramics, no domesticated animals or cultivated crops. Just stone and bone and wood and hide. Just knowledge and skill and incredible persistence. We are their heirs. We carry their legacy. Every time we gather around the campfire, every time we tell stories in the dark, every time we choose to endure hardship rather than quit, we're echoing them, honouring them, continuing their story. The winter survival skills they developed, the patience and planning and careful use of resources, these aren't just historical curiosities. They're lessons. Reminders of what humans can accomplish when we have to. when we work together, when we don't give up. In our modern world, we've insulated ourselves from hardship, and that's good. Survival shouldn't be the daily challenge it once was. But maybe we've lost something too. The satisfaction of difficult things achieved. The deep bonds formed through shared struggle. The peace that comes from knowing, truly knowing, that you can endure. As you lie there, in the last moments before the day begins in earnest, you might reflect on this, on the comfort of your bed, the warmth of your home, the ease of your life, and maybe feel a moment of gratitude. Not guilt, not shame for having it easier, but simple gratitude for the ancestors who endured so we wouldn't have to, for the progress that's been made, for the fact that survival, for most of us, is no longer the daily struggle it once was, but also maybe a reminder that the capacity for endurance is still there.
That if needed, if circumstances demanded it, you could find within yourself some of that same strength, that same refusal to quit that kept your ancestors alive through Ice Age winters. The fire in the main chamber is roaring now. You can hear voices, low, calm, the sounds of people beginning their day. Someone is checking the weather at the entrance. Someone else is portioning out food. The rhythm of life, the ancient rhythm, continuing as it has for thousands of years. You push back the furs, feel the cold air rush in. Take a breath, and then you rise. Time to join the others. Time to tend the fire, to eat, to prepare for whatever this winter day will bring. Time to be part of the unbroken chain, the story that's still being written, the fire that's still burning. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for travelling back with me to a time when sleep was not taken for granted, but earned through careful preparation and community cooperation. When warmth was precious. When darkness was total. When every morning was a small victory. I hope you found some peace in this story, some rest in the darkness we explored together. Sleep well wherever you are. Dream well, and wake knowing that you carry within you the strength of winter survivors, the wisdom of firekeepers, the persistence of those who refused to let the cold win. The fire lives. We live. Rest easy. Sleep well. Until next time, good night.